Hi, my name is Synapse, or Synapse Chess, and I'm about to prepare for a chess game I have tomorrow. And I wanted to show people the preparation process that I have using a website called openingtree.com and also Lichess. And so this game tomorrow is 45 minutes per side plus 45-second increment against user MCAT on Lichess. And I'll have the black pieces. And so what I'm going to do is use this website to analyze what openings they play, see how they score in those openings, and then fine-tune my openings to make sure I do well. And what I've just done here is specified lichess.org as the source, MCAT as the user, and I've logged in as my account, Synapse, to speed up the game download process. And I've selected white, and I already loaded the games. So I can go here and see the games. And they've played a ton of games. And right off the bat, you can tell that they are mainly an e4 player. And while this is happening in the background, I'm going to do another tab with also MCAT, also white. And I'll only make the time controls classical and rapid. And that's because these games are longer time control games, and I want to see what openings they play when they're actually thinking carefully and not just blitzing out, playing bullet, random moves. And so I'm going to click Analyze Games here. And while that's happening, let's go back here. So they're an e4 player. Now, for reference, I play either the Sicilian or the Caro-Kann against e4. And so I'm going to take a look at these two variations and potentially decide which one I want to play based on how well this opponent scores against each. And so I'll start with the Sicilian. And right off the bat, we see something interesting. They mainly play d4 immediately, which is not the main line. As people know, it generally goes something like this. Takes, knight f6, knight c3, and you have the knight or for whatever. But no, my opponent doesn't do that. They play d4 immediately. And the way I've always been taught is you just do c takes d4. Oh, okay. They're a Smith-Morra player. Now this is interesting. Because I was going to say if they just took with the queen, that would be terrible. So they're a Smith-Morra player. And when I play against the Smith-Morra, I play d3, which is called the push variation. And the point of this variation, and I won't go into too much detail about specific openings here, the point of this variation is that you don't give white the fast development here, and you kind of force this bishop to go to an awkward square. And then you just develop normally, knight c6, knight f3, d6, bishop b5 or whatever, bishop d7, and so on. And so that's one option I have. But I'm not sure I want to go into Smith-Morra territory since I don't know the push variation that well. So let's see what they do against c6. And this is called the Caro-Kann. And they play d4, d5, and it looks like they play the exchange variation. E takes d5, c takes d5, and c4. This is the Panov attack. And I also don't know this one super well, but this might be a better chance than the push variation. But we'll see. We'll also take a look at my games and the openings that I've played against the Smith-Morra, for instance, or the Panov, to see how well I've performed. Because there's a meta aspect to all of this, where, and this has actually hurt me in the past, where my opponents are also using opening tree and also seeing their own mistakes and my strengths, and we're both trying to play the game against each other. And it can get really complicated, convoluted, kind of like Inception. And so it's best to just have a few different things prepared, obviously. But it's really fun to see who can out-prepare the other. And so this is the Panoff. And I imagine tomorrow, either I can go for the Smith Mora, and I'll probably play the push variation, or we'll get into a Panoff. And the question is, which one do I want to do more? And I think what I need to do to answer that question is to look at my own games, but also create a Lichess study and kind of walk through some of the main variations for each. And I won't do all that in this video. I just kind of wanted to demonstrate how Opening Tree works well. And so let's go to my next tab. And here we have 2,000 games, which is pretty wild. This person plays a lot of chess. E4. Wait, let's go back for a minute. So sometimes when you see, they also have a secondary opening that they play a good amount, it's helpful to check how recently they've played this. Because sometimes it can be the case that they've played this only in the past and they don't play it anymore. And so that's why you can open up a third tab, have the user, and then set a filter for when played. And I can do just June 2020 onwards. And this will help me know what their current theory knowledge is instead of what they've been doing maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And so I like to have these 3 different settings on 3 different tabs when I'm doing preparation for my opponents. So let's open one more tab and go to Opening Tree again. And we'll look up myself as black, and we're going to say when played, and we'll have it be 2020 because I've learned a good amount of theory this year, and I'd rather not show you guys what I've played in the past. So, and then lastly, I'll have a Lichess study, which I've called Prep Against MCAT, and I can name this first chapter, let's say, the Panoff. And then we can go into, some variations here. And I won't go into too much detail. And I won't show you guys all of the prep that I do in these Lichess studies. But then I might have another chapter, which could be the push variation, for instance. And I have other Lichess studies, private studies, that I've done on the push variation, for instance, for prep from another league game. And so I might use that or clone that into this study. So let's go back to my games as black. And I'm going to flip the board. You can click F, or you can go here and flip board. But I'll analyze games and E4. And you can see that I'm pretty much equal on Sicilians and Caro-Kann, which is awesome. I don't want my opponent to know which one I'm going to play, so they'll have a harder time preparing against me. So let's see what I do for the Panoff. I've only had this 3 times in 2020, and I've played knight f6, knight c3, and this isn't enough data really to know how I play against it. Let's try the push variation. C5, D4, C takes D4, C3, D3. And I only have 3 games in this variation as well in 2020. So my opponent's probably not going to learn too much from me about how I play these different variations. So that's a good thing, honestly. It means that they can't glean too much information about sidelines that I like to play, and then I might be able to surprise them with some. So that's a basic overview of how I prepare for these competitive games. And I'll use this information to potentially prepare some kind of poison or to really narrow my focus on what lines I need to review before my game. And this doesn't work all the time. Small caveat, since your opponents also are looking at their own opening trees and your opening trees, they might kind of have a meta understanding and adapt or play new lines knowing that you might prepare for others. And a great example of this is when I was preparing for an opponent who played the London system and I was playing black. And I saw that they score very poorly and play the wrong lines against G6 setups, King's Indian setups against the London. And I don't play King's Indian setups against the London. I play the Grunfeld occasionally against D5. Actually, almost the whole time against D5 I play the Grunfeld. But I play more of a typical main line against the London. And my opponent, and they told me this after the game. And so first off, I was like, okay, I can score well. I can potentially win if I play G6 setups against their London. So that's what I prepared to do. My opponent looked at their own opening trees and my opening tree. They saw that I played the main line as black against the London, but they saw that I played the Grunfeld against other D4 openings. And they looked at their own opening tree, and they saw that they scored really poorly against King's Indian setups in the London. And so they expected me to try and play a G6 setup against them and prepared new and better lines against G6. And so they took me out of preparation on move 3 when they played knight C3 instead of knight D2. And I ended up winning the game, luckily. But it goes to show that this isn't a panacea for opening preparation. So I hope this was helpful in your own preparation. And there are so many other features that are awesome on this website. I can save tree files, which is basically like a PGN built specifically for opening tree, or I can export as PGNs, and I can load this back up for ease the next time I want to do this, which is especially convenient considering this person has 4,000 games. Anyways, if you enjoyed this, please leave a comment. I'll answer any questions you guys have, and I'll see you next time.